segment. We're heading straight into our next conversation on keeping Accra beautiful, right? We had a famous promise of making the city clean. The judgment is out there for you to make. But this time around, we are talking about beautifying the city, beautifying the space, and who else will help us, or rather join us have this conversation, than someone who has been there, seen it, and has somewhat of experience within the space. Edem Kojo Do, right? A horticultural scientist and a Longwood fellow is our guest. Edem, welcome to Breakfast Daily Weekend.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Eno, for having me.
You're welcome.
I saw your profile. An incredible journey it's been for you, right? So a Longwood fellow, been in the space, excited about plants, beautification of public spaces and all of that. Before we delve into the conversation proper on beautifying spaces, public parks and all of that, you work at the office of the president, right? At the Parks and Gardens, if that's correct. Yeah. Interesting. Talk to us about how all of this started. How did the love even begin with in the first place? Were you excited about plants as I am for football? How did it happen?
Yeah, it is. I take it from the football bits. I used to be a footballer myself.
Oh.
Played football in Tamale, juvenile coast football.
Wow.
And then I played for Mashu Didi's Germanic club in Tamale. Jawless club.
Yeah.
Yeah, for first division. Played for.
Are you kidding me?
For first division, and before I went into plant, but I've always loved plants as a child. Growing up as a young boy in Tamale, I used to follow a colleague's father or a neighbor's father to the farm, where we go to plant sweet potatoes, maize, yam, and other staples. And I think that was where I picked the love from. And then when I went to secondary school, I decided to pursue agriculture science. And when my colleagues were doing animal science, agriculture, mechanics, and economics, I decided to go in a particular niche which people don't know about, which is horticulture. And horticulture is a huge industry.
Can imagine.
A $1 trillion industry, which Ghana has not actually tapped into greatly. So I was lucky to go into that space. I schooled at School of Horticulture at the Botanic Gardens. It's the only school of horticulture you can find in all of West Africa. And I did my diploma program there, and I met great mentors. So the principal there, he was Mr. Bagulu, and the first man who gave me the opportunity in the space, especially in the civil service, was Mr. Rafael Massam, who used to be the former curator of Ebri Botanic Garden, who is retired now. He has been of great help and mentorship. And to kill the mentorship, I was the former acting director of Parks and Gardens, Reverend Okan, who also mentored me through the process. And I've had, as I said, I had great mentors. And fortunately on my part, blending horticulture and leadership became very easy for me because I became a Kufuor scholar under the tutelage of President Kufuor for 2 years, groomed to be a leader. And that also propelled my leadership skills, especially in horticulture. And after studying horticulture, my first appointment was at Ebri Botanic Gardens. I worked there and taught in the School of Horticulture as well for some few years. And then I went back to the university to study environmental science. And then from there, I came back to the presidency again at Pejas. So I was at Pejas Lodge for almost 10 years before when my boss went on retirement.
Pejas Lodge.
Pejas Lodge.
Not the seat there.
The presidential lodge.
The presidential lodge.
Yeah, so that's where I started from in the presidency. So it's all under. The presidency has different spaces where the Department of Parks and Gardens unit manages. So we have Pejas Lodge, Jubilee House, State House, Castle, and the VVIP launch of the airport. So those are the spaces we take care of at the presidency. So I started from Pejas Lodge. So from Ebri Gardens to Pejas Lodge, and finally to the Jubilee House. So that's how my journey started.
It's an amazing story and a testament to following your passion, right? And it's pretty impressive. Later on, I'll just ask you about your experience at the Longwood Fellow too, so you can share with us. But talk to us. I go morning jogging Ebri, and have you tried it before?
Look at me looking at you with a bombastic side eye.
I go to the Ebri Ayi-Mensa jogging, right? And I get in front of the Peduasa Lodge, which is also part of the seat of government. And I'm impressed by the pristine condition of the lawn, right? And it looks so amazing. But outside of the Jubilee House, and the Pediassi Lodge. I can't say same for the median at the Major Mahama bypass. So is it a failing on the part of the parks and gardens to get all of these public spaces and public parks in pristine conditions like the Pediassi Lodge? Because not too long ago, we were talking about the Far Sutherland Park, which I believe also falls under parks and gardens, if not, tell us. But why are we not seeing our public spaces in proper condition?
Yeah. Thank you so much for this question. It's really interesting you asked that. To start with, the Far Sutherland Park is not under the jurisdiction of Department of Parks and Gardens. It's under the management of Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. So let's get that clear. So it's not part of Parks and Gardens jurisdiction. With regards to the median as compared to Pediassi Lodge and Jubilee House, one of the things I always tell people, especially studying in the United States for 30 months at Longwood Gardens, even though we'll get there, but I just want to pick some few things and related to that. What I've learned in 30 months studying in the United States are three major things: people, intentionality, and storytelling. The people bit, and luckily Ghana is lucky that we have the experts who are horticulture scientists in Ghana. So the Department of Parks and Ghana has officers who are experts in this industry. And you go to every region of Ghana, especially the old 10 regions, you find experts who are horticulturists manning the Department of Parks and Gardens. The second bit, which is a challenge, which we all know and we need to look at it, is intentionality. We are not yet deliberate about that. Policies, governance, funding, we are not deliberate about it. What I learned in the United States, they are very intentional with what kind of investment they put in green spaces, in investment they put into their medians, their lawns, their garden, their parks. So Ghana as a state must all come together and say, we want to invest in our green spaces. We want to invest, because at the presidency, to be frank with you, there's intentionality. The presidency has said that we want the Jubilee House to look good. We want Pediassi Lodge to look good, because that's where we meet other country presidents. But why can't it
trickle down to our local assemblies, our local communities?
So again, government or all governments must be intentional and deliberate with that. If you're able to do that, because sometimes in Ghana there's always that issue of there's no money. But there's money for everything if you make it a priority. For instance, there's a government policy that talks about having astroturfs in each constituency in Ghana. Are we not finding money for astroturfs in Ghana? Are they not being built? So until we also be intentional and deliberate about looking for funding, or government looking for partnership and say, okay, we want to have public spaces and green spaces or gardens in all regions of Ghana, and this is what we want to do. Then government can then say, each MMDA, that's the Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies, should take part of their common fund or their funding and say, let's use Adenta Municipality. Adenta Municipality take for Adenta Barrier to Pontoon Junction and make sure that you allocate maybe $1, $2, $1,000, or 1,000 Ghana cedi to maintain this stretch. Just get parks and garden experts, give them the necessary tools, machinery, and support, and they're able to do that. You don't need $1 million to maintain these green spaces. We just have to be deliberate and intentional with it. So one, our MMDAs must take it as a challenge and say, we allocate funding each budget year for specific areas in our various MMDAs. Then we are good to go.
Okay, so let's talk about, now Accra is like a concrete jungle and we're seeing floods. How can greening our, our community or our homes or our lands help in solving these specific problems, floods?
So interestingly, there's an opportunity for us to grow sustainable as a country. And I tell people you can use horticulture or greenery to create sustainability. And when I talk about sustainability, I'm not just talking about environmental sustainability. We're also talking about social sustainability. We're talking about economic sustainability. Because horticulture encapsulates these three sustainability components. For instance, if you're able to grow the horticulture industry, you are going to create social sustainability because it brings people together. Green spaces, public spaces, gardens bring people from all backgrounds. In a garden, when you enter a garden, all you are thinking about is beauty. Just look at the background. It's just refreshing. You are not also investing in beauty. You're also investing in people's health. Because plants absorb all the toxins in the air, and they give us fresh air. They absorb carbon dioxide and give us oxygen to breathe. So you are creating spaces for people to be healthy.
Right.
And secondly, in a garden, there's no MPP, NDCs, PPP. There's no Ever, there's no Asante, there's no Dagomba.
Right.
It's a space everybody can occupy. It's the most neutral space you can have. So that's social sustainability and social cohesion. When it comes to economic sustainability, if I tell you the amount of money people make in the United States just having gardens, for instance, Longwood Gardens, their annual revenue is $93+ million. Annual revenue. And it's 1,100-acre space.
Right.
And they've activated that space to make money.
Is that
And
what
how
we are
did they
seeing
make
in
the
our
money?
shot?
Yeah, that's Longwood Gardens. So how did they make the money? Through admission fees, membership, through programming.
Right.
So they have educational program to teach people floriculture, how to design flowers in a room. They teach people plant science, pest and disease management. So there are a lot of spaces you can do. They also host concerts. So luckily, when I was in Longwood, they hosted Angelique Kidjo, one of the great legends of music. So I was privileged to meet her in Longwood. And the tickets were sold out 3 months ahead of this concert.
You're a big man.
So they are
My
making
bosses
a
will
lot
say,
of
"You're a
money
big
just
man."
with that space.
Yeah.
So it's just an issue of activating those spaces. So that's economic. And also, Longwood employs 500 people in that space. So imagine all these 500 people are paid. And we're not talking about a mere 1,500 Ghana cedi. You know, in the United States, they are paid per hour.
Per hour, yeah.
And if I tell you how much so you in Ghana, who will say a gardener, somebody just weeding.
I was about to ask, was there like a difference between a horticulturist and a gardener?
Exactly. So they're all the same, but the only difference is that if you're a horticulture scientist, it means you've studied advanced in the field.
Okay.
A gardener is somebody who just have the basics.
The basics.
So,
right.
But for me, I still call myself a gardener. Whether I'm a horticulture, I'm still a gardener because I still work with plants. I still monitor plants, I still create plants.
Okay.
So, and interestingly, horticulture is more like a science and an art combined together. Because there's a science in it, there's an art. So behind me, you can see
The art.
The art.
But there's also a science in that because even in blending the plants, I need to know which plant can thrive in which soil, in which environment, in which situation.
Okay.
So that's the science behind it. And you must also know the final growth and how the plant will end up growing and becoming, and what they'll produce, whether they are going to produce poisonous substances, whether they are going to produce fragrant flowers. So those are all the dynamics in that. And the environmental bit, if you're talking about climate change, what is more mitigating than planting trees, than growing grass? For example, if I build a house and I put concrete there, when there's heat, do you know what happens at night? The heat bounces back to you. But if it's grass or lawns, I'm not talking about astroturf, I'm not talking about artificial grass, I'm talking about natural grass. They absorb the heat, get into the soil, and give you back moisture. So that's why there's a difference between when we are entering a tree space. He was just talking about climbing a brie every weekend for training.
Yeah.
If you observe, when you are climbing or you are driving, just at Mensa, when you climb the mountain, there's a different temperature altogether.
Yeah.
So plant has its own way of resolving some of these things. So climate change can be resolved if we pay good attention, be deliberate about our green spaces. Ghana will be a better place to be.
Okay.
Because we are lucky.
Right.
In the United States, there are 4 seasons. Winter, summer,
autumn,
fall, and then winter, summer, and spring.
And spring.
So they don't have sunshine 12 months in a year. They have sunshine only 4 months in a year, but they still create the conditions to maintain these spaces.
So on our screens now,
we
see Ghana.
You see Ghana. We have 12 months of sunshine.
Yeah.
We have water, we have the quality of air, we have the good soil.
Yeah.
In some part of the world, they don't have good soils. But in Ghana, they will tell you, even when you put cassava sticks in the soil, it grows. You put plantain, it grows. So all the conditions needed for green spaces in Ghana is there right in front of us. All we need is being intentional and deliberate and telling stories.
But But when we leave the medians of the road, I think we're being intentional about it. They plant the grass or whatever, but then they leave it to overgrow, weeds take over. What can be done about that?
So this is simple. We just have to say, as a country, our investment should go into this, because an investment has gone into the road infrastructure.
Right.
But what can complement the road infrastructure is the median, the landscapes. So as a country, we need to say, maybe each year, government can say we're allocating this amount of money, just like Green Ghana, which is a brilliant initiative by the President and the Republic
Are
of
you
Ghana.
implementing agencies together with the
Yeah, we are
Ministry of
collaborating with Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. That's
and the Forestry Commission?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a collaborative work. And interest, I was part of the National Planning Committee of that project. Brilliant. The President was intentional about that and said, let's allocate this amount of money to run the Green Ghana project. So a similar intentionality can be done by being deliberate and say, every year, let's allocate this amount of money to the Department of Parks and Gardens to make sure that these spaces are managed. And also be intentional with the human resource company and say, every year, we can employ 50, 100 people to help boost the Department of Parks and Gardens to make sure that these spaces are well catered for. Because you need people. Even in the era of AI, you still need people on the ground to implement.
It's interesting. My colleague Eno talks about managing the space. And to be fair, I know the challenges you face are more deep, right? Because you have lack of staffers, right? So you are dealing with challenges of even staffers to begin with. How many, do you have an idea the number now? Because I read somewhere it was...
So currently, I don't have the numbers with regards
to... But you're understaffed.
Understaffed. That one is what...
Wow.
So even to get the details, I think maybe we need to invite the acting director of Parks and Gardens, Mr. Dan Adams. He'll give you a breakdown, every detail of what is actually happening currently in the department. I'm not in that capacity to speak
on the numbers. No problem. My question to you was some of the challenges you are facing to implement and what your recommendations would be. Of course, I like that you've already come out with this public advocacy, talking about it, and I think that's the first step in addressing the problems. Not too long ago, we read about encroaches, even on your land, all across the country, from the north to here in Accra, you were dealing with this challenge. But I want you to talk to us about how you are able to use modern trends, right? Because you talk about the Norwood Gardens, right?
Longwood Gardens, yes, in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. We see pictures of the White House, the frontage, right? How are you able to use modern trends to tackle the very problems you have? Because then again, you admit that there's a funding issue. Government is not really helping with regards to supporting to get all the resources you need.
Government is helping, but it's not enough adequate.
Yeah, so they are not helping. if they are helping,
it's not adequate,
and it's not adequate,
helping.
So they are not helping. So I want you to talk to us, because I've seen some state agencies who, out of nothing, have made it work. So what are we not doing right? Are we able to use modern trends to even better our lot with regards to parks and gardens? Are we able to say, okay, we'll now do private services, public services, we are responsible for research. A component of parks and gardens is also responsible for research. Yes, are we able to use what we have, the existing resources, although little, to try and improve the situation? Is there a conversation we should begin having?
Yeah, it's a very good conversation. I think that conversation has even started. Government cannot do it all. So we need some kind of private-public partnership. And in Ghana, you see, when they talk about PPP, sometimes it looks different from certain part of the world. What I've seen with our PPPs is more like individuals or private people trying to grab and take over. That is not PPP. Collaboration should not be about me grabbing or taking before we can work. Collaboration can be in terms of maybe I bring my resources as in land or space. Okay, you bring your money. I can also bring machinery or tools, and we work together to push. But the moment the PPP becomes more like I'm taking over or I'm grabbing, that becomes challenging. So how we should approach it is more like collaboration and partnership, so that everybody can win on both sides.
So the ministries, local assemblies, willing private
sector. So for instance, this is what can be done. When you take the PPP, we can say the Ministry of Local Government, which the Department of Parks and Gardens is under, can say each year this amount of budget we can raise to help. And let's say from the median, I would like to use Adenta more because it's a stretch I use more.
Use often.
From Adenta barrier or from Ridge Junction to Pantan Junction. Okay, the MMD, that's Adenta Municipal Assembly, can say, okay, we can provide 5 or 10 staff to help us and Gardens maintain that.
Right.
Okay, so every month we can provide X liters of fuel to power the machinery or the mowers Parks and Garden have. Okay, then let's say West African Deco, which has a space along that stretch, and they are doing something beautiful. They are mentioning them because they are doing a lot in helping Parks and Gardens and government to manage some of the spaces. Because we planted trees some years ago there, and the beautiful planted carpet grass there, and that place looks beautiful. So if you are traveling along that street, just watch West African Deco. You see what they are doing there. You understand what I'm talking about.
It's incredible. Time is not on our side.
Yeah, Parks and Gardens is not paying them to do it. They are doing it just to help the department, and it's coming out nicely.
You should lend your expertise to those who are managing our pitches in the country. the Ohenejan Sports Stadium.
That's a different conversation.
That's what I'm saying. So you should give them free consultancy, right? Because if we start to go into that one, it's a different conversation. But thank you so much for your advocacy, for leading the conversation. Except that we want to see a lot more of the actual work being done. And I'm sure you raise it up at the appropriate quarters. But finally, your experience at Longwood. We need to hear the story very briefly because time is not far.
In the 30 months, as I said, the 3 things, people, storytelling, intentionality. And Longwood is a beautiful garden. It's a 1,100 acres of a garden.
Incredible.
Wow.
Which was founded by the Dupont family. It's called Pierre Dupont. If you know about the Dupont family. They are French. They were rich guys. They were into chemicals in the US. So he bought this 1,100 acre land and created a garden in 1906. And it's one of the beautiful gardens.
And since 1906,
the place even smells like
thriving.
1906. And I'll always tell people, Longwood is heaven on earth.
Wow.
Beautiful place.
I like that.
Well manicured lawns. Beautiful. The space is just unimaginable. So I always tell people, I wish every horticulturist will have this experience once in your lifetime.
To shape your understanding
your
of
thought, to shape your design, your creativity, your innovation, and your science background, and how spaces can be activated, and how people can use horticulture, public garden, green spaces to create the 3 components of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental.
I'm sure if you are transported from Longwood straight into the Odo area, your
culture shock.
your perspective will just
it'll change.
Anyway, like I said, thank you so much for coming and of course for your advocacy in the space. It's appreciated, except that Ghanaians aren't happy with how the spaces are.
Can I have a second to just say something?
Right, sure, go ahead.
Longwood Garden is doing something in the world no one is doing yet with the Longwood Forest Program. They describe it as the executive MBA program in horticulture.
Okay.
They are training global leaders to actually take over the world in terms of green spaces. And this is something I wish people can invest in.
I mean, we need government.
They are spending thousands of $100s into individuals.
All right. So, Adam Kojo Do, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Listeners, that's all time we'll allow us for this segment where we spend time with Adam Kojo Do, who is a horticultural scientist. I mean, a wealth of experience within the space, helping us understand how we can make our public spaces and medians better. I mean, it's a very sorry state if you travel, for example. Even right Tesano, right in front of the Ghana Telecom School coming to the PCFM traffic lights. You can't see the oncoming vehicle. And we are saying that's a public hazard, it's a public safety hazard, and we need to address all of these conversations. So he started the conversations, and we are grateful for